Hello, hello. Audible? Hello, hello. आवाज आ रही है? स्टार्ट करें? तो अभी टाइम हुआ 5:08, 5:12 को स्टार्ट करता हूँ. So guys, hello, hello, guys. Comment कहाँ पे दिखे? Comment, comment नहीं दिखे. I'm audible, I hope. Guys, you can hear me, all of you. Good evening, guys. Just say yes for being uh, audible, all of you, I hope. Uh, Everyone, it's audible. Good evening, guys. Good evening, all of you. Good evening, Khushi, Noob, Anmol, Rohit, Aditya, Stuti. Yes, perfect, perfect, perfect. So we will be starting in a couple of minutes, yes. And most importantly, today we will discuss RC in a very new fashion, basically. My voice is feeble. Am I audible right now? Low volume? Is it clear? Perfect, cool. So what today we are doing is basically I will teach you some basic techniques on RC, especially on assumption, strengthening and weakening. So why I have taken this particular section, that is important because assumption is something which you should understand. Because in case of RC, when the question is getting difficult, we need to understand where basically we are hitting, right? Like what is the basically the meaning between two lines? Like you understand, like read between the lines. So this kind of things we are going to use today, right? So that's why assumption is very important because assumption specifically is basically the read between the lines. So that's basically our agenda today. We are doing strengthening, we are doing weakening. So today's session is like around 45 minutes, 50-minute session. So it's like that's all about today. And we will specifically deciding something specifically on assumption. So don't worry, I'm just starting in a couple of minutes, yes. And most importantly, I hope you will love this session because we will make this thing some way very interesting so that you can understand from a very regular experience like what exactly we are using and why we are using this. Because how we basically creating the space for assumption, how we are basically creating the space for premise, what is the understanding of conclusion. So we are basically working with assumption today, so we are not going into other things like inference and everything. So please, so we have a small session. I'm basically hitting the exact target which we have basically chosen. Correct. You can take notes obviously. If you want, you can take screenshots also, you can take notes also, and especially you need to be very, very careful while listening to this. Trust me, very, very careful because I will be discussing a lot of things which is very, very crucial when you are basically understanding the entire thing, like the entire assumption and all of these things. And this is not the regular RC class. It's a very interesting, I try to make it very interesting so that you will love it. So I think let's begin. Let's begin, guys. Welcome on board, everyone. We are starting now, so let's begin. So first thing you can see, like this is a pool is 12 feet deep, basically, and hence I recommend you to dive in. So these are like two independent statements. You can see these are two exactly independent sentence, which is pool is 12 feet deep, hence I recommend you to dive in. Now this itself is basically one argument, right? It's an argument. Okay? This is argument because this is one part, this is the second part. It's a two sentences and they basically creating one argument. So we need to understand now how to derive the concepts behind this argument. Okay? So that is our first thing. So our pool is 12 feet deep, hence I recommend you to dive in. That is the first thing we are going to say, right? So next is we need to understand now what is premise and what is conclusion. So argument generally has two sections. One is premise, one is conclusion. So we will understand what is premise, we will understand what is conclusion, right? So we will go step by step. So please stay with me. So I'll make you understand premise kya hota hai, conclusion kya hota hai, what are these things and how is assumption is working in these statements also. So the next. So what is the premise? This statement is premise. Now what is premise? Premise can be a fact. Premise can be anyone's judgment. Premise can be any data. Premise can be a statistics. Premise can be anything which is basically the basic sentence जिसके ऊपर क्या होता है वो पूरा argument define होता है. Do you understand me? The argument is basically defined on premise. So the premise is a pool is 12 feet deep because it's a statement. It's a fact that has been already given to you. So when it is a stat, it's already given to you, or it's like a statement, it's a fact, it's a judgment. So this thing we are calling premise. So understand this is premise. So premise is what? A pool is 12 feet deep. Out of this two sentence, this one is premise. Am I clear? So ये क्या है? Premise है. Premise. All of you with me? So the next thing we are going to learn now, what after premise. So what is my second statement? My second statement is this. And this is basically what it is, conclusion. So as because the pool is 12 feet deep, I am recommending you to dive in. Do you understand me? So what is my recommendation? My recommendation, you are diving in because the pool is 12 feet deep. So this is also a cause and effect kind of thing you can say because this is the reasoning I am giving. Pool is 12 feet deep and hence I recommend you to dive in. Agar, if the pool is not 12 feet deep, I may not recommend you to dive. If the pool is let's say 5 feet, I may not recommend you and I may not recommend you to dive, right? So this hence I recommend you to dive in. So my recommendation is basically this conclusion. Do you understand me? So this premise, so remember the premise always is not fixed. It's depending on the question. It's depending on the question. It can have a multiple premise. It can have a single premise. Even the conclusion can be multiple also. You can have an intermediate conclusion. You can have a final conclusion as well. So it always depends on the. Today we are starting with the basic of the premise and conclusion so that we understand what is basically happening. So this is conclusion. This is premise. Now tell me one thing. So this is two independent thing and what is basically connecting these two statements? What is basically connecting, guys? ये दोनों statement को connect करने के लिए मुझे क्या चाहिए? मतलब what are we basically implicitly assuming? What is our assumption? What we are assuming so that I can say I recommend you to dive in. What is anyone answer please, guys? What is my recommendation? My recommendation is to diving in and the premises is 12 feet deep. Now what is basically connecting these two statements? What is my implicit assumption? What is my implicit understanding about it? क्या होना चाहिए? Everyone, क्या है? What is it? So guys, answer. My implicit assumption, one is said pool. It can be multiple assumptions also. So what is the assumption? Pool is not the assumption. What is basically implicitly stated here, which we are not using here? It's not exactly physics phenomena. So what I can say, my assumption is basically 12 feet deep is safe for diving. I can say, assuming if the pool is 12 feet deep, so it is safe for diving. Exactly, you are saying the right. So this is not only one assumption, right? This, yes, also, this is also an assumption. That the pool has water also. हो सकता है वो the pool has no water. It's just a swimming pool and there is no water. So the pool has water, this is the assumption. The 12 feet deep is basically a safe height for diving in. Exactly, that is the assumption. Do you understand me? You are able to dive. That is also an assumption. What else? Like, especially the pool in these cases, and you also know like what is the pros and cons about diving, like whether you understand the pool is uniform with 12 feet deep. So all of these things are basically assumptions. So remember one thing, in a question, there is not always one assumption. You can have a lot of assumption to get this conclusion. Am I clear? So we can have a lot of assumptions just to reach this thing. And similarly, what we want to do, what we want to do, we want to take the best kind of assumptions possible. Sometime in questions you can have like two assumptions, but you need to select the right kind of assumption, or like the assumption which is mostly applicable. For this, the most applicable assumption is generally 12 feet deep is a safe height for diving in. Am I clear? Cool? So guys, so next we are going to do the something again. Next is, let's say, now what is the assumption? Now I have written some assumption for you also, like swimming ability. Agar if you are going to dive, you should also know how to swim also. You cannot just dive, right? So your swimming ability and you are comfortable in diving in a swimming pool, that is also a very important assumption. Second assumption, safety precautions. It assumes that the pool is safe for diving with no shallow areas and obstructions. Obviously, because I am saying the 12 feet deep is safe for diving. So the safety assumption is also a very important assumption. Next, health and physical fitness. It assumes that the guy who is basically diving, or the girl who is basically diving, he is physically fit and he can dive at that point of time also. That is a kind of assumption also. I'm just giving you all possible kind of assumptions which this argument can have. So next is fourth, knowledge of water depth. Obviously the guy or the girl who is basically diving, or the diver who actually knows the knowledge, who actually knows it is actually 12 feet deep. So might be it is possible he can deep in an angular ways, he can might deep in a straight, he might deep like directly perpendicular. So there's all of the angles are also involved here. Do you understand? So he should have the knowledge like 12 feet deep. So how I'm going to dive. So that is an assumption also. Next is obviously absence of external factors, like there are no external factors such as currents, temperature, visibility issues. All of these things are basically assumption. But remember, these 4-5 assumptions are not very strong assumption. I have written 5 assumptions. Why? Because I just need to make sure these are all assumptions, but these are not all great assumptions. The great assumption is basically, the best assumption is this: the pool is safe for diving. Simply I can say it, the 12 feet is basically safe for diving. That is the base assumption what I have said. The remaining everything is assumption. Am I clear? All of these things are assumptions. But we always need to see which is the best kind of assumption. Which is the best kind of assumption. Am I clear? Am I clear? All of you? Do you understand what I'm saying? So what is basically assumption? So assumption is something which connects your premise to conclusion. So your premise is pool is 12 feet deep and I recommended you to dive in. So my major assumption is that the pool is safe for diving and 12 feet depth is also safe for diving. This is basically the assumption. This is the argument's assumption. If we are assuming this, then only we can get the conclusion. Let's see, if I say the pool, the 12 feet deep is not a right kind of depth for diving, let's say. So now if I am basically attacking my assumption, then the statement, then the argument basically being basically what? It's basically weakening. So that's why I have come with arguments, strengthening and weakening. Now if I say the pool, why not? The first option is also good. Like it's also good, but I always try to, I will tell you why the second option is the best option. So, so what I was saying, like when you are having these two things, basically, like 12 feet deep is like the base assumption, and I was saying like why it is the base assumption, because always the base assumption is something which clearly focuses on your logic. So the logic basically is that 12 feet deep is safe for diving. The remaining everything is basically strengthening your premise, like you can swim, it is okay to swim. Like it is okay to dive, you have a clear visibility. So all these things are improving your premise. But what improves your logic? Your logic improves when I say 12 feet deep is what? Safe for diving. So it is basically improving my logic, because I am not improving my premise. I am not saying the pool is 24 feet deep also in some places. Am I clear? So we are using this concept of critical reasoning basically to understand how to create this assumption, because this thing is very common in difficult CAT questions. So we need to understand how we can how we can motivate our thought process, what idea we should go. Am I clear? Got it, guys? Now if I say 12 feet is not a safe thing, then I can say my conclusion might not be correct. If I say, let's say 12 feet is not a great depth for diving in, So then my conclusion will be what? Compromised. You understand? When your assumption is basically being weakened, generally what happens? Your conclusion got compromised. If I say 12 feet is deep is not a right depth for diving, then what I say, like whatever I recommended is not correct. So whenever the best way to weaken, the best way to strengthen is always target the assumption. Because assumption is the logic. If you improve logic, your argument is more sound. If you just weaken your logic, your argument gets weakened. You understand me? So this is how it works. Sometimes people say like, I can say like also, like the 12 feet deep pool is not a right thing. Like it's an incorrect statement. This also weakens the argument, but this won't weaken the way it weakens when I'm targeting the logic. Am I clear? Guys, all of you, is it fine? Great. So shall we go for the next? You understand the basic idea of assumption, the basic idea of weakening, strengthening, where we are basically focusing. We will understand it more. We'll have another example for this exactly. So let's see, then we will go for another RC passage also, where also we learn the same thing. So let's go for the next one. Here for you. Just read this first. The GDP of Chad. So which one is premise and which one is conclusion? The first thing first. Which one is premise and which one is conclusion? Premise, conclusion, which one it is? Guys, all of you, I'm giving you 1 minute, you can answer. Yes. Now let's discuss. I've given you some time. Obviously, I guess cannot see any answer, but I think like you are going to give answers. Yes. So here, let me discuss. Yes. Obviously, you're correct. This first one to this one is basically premise, and this one is basically conclusion. The GDP of Chad. What is Chad? Chad is basically a nation in Africa. You all know the Chad. Chad is like a very well-known nation in Africa. So yes, all of you guys, just love it. You are getting the right thing. Exactly, you understand the premise and conclusion at least. Perfect, guys. Perfect, perfect. First is premise, second is conclusion. Now let me make you understand. So Chad is basically a country in Africa. Obviously, GDP has grown. All of you know what is GDP. GDP is gross domestic product. So I have said Chad has grown 20% during the tenure of the current political party. So that is my statement. That is my premise. So what is my conclusion? The conclusion is the political party has done a good job and deserves a second term. So this is my conclusion. So the political party has done great and they deserve another chance, right? So this is premise. So this portion is premise. This portion is conclusion. Am I clear? So this is premise, this is conclusion. GDP, gross domestic product. Yes. So let's think about it now. What is the assumption? What is the assumption, guys? What is the assumption? Tell me now assumption. क्या होना चाहिए इसका assumption? Everyone in board. What is the assumption? Giving you a minute. What is the assumption? That's funny, Giga Chad. Yes, it is possible. There are some options are there where the first statement can be conclusion, the second statement can be premise. It's fine. You just need to understand what is the conclusion. You should understand the meaning of the sentence. Like where I am recommending something, that is conclusion. Where I am finalizing something, that is conclusion. Generally, conclusion comes with like hence, therefore, like so I recommend, so you should do this. So this kind of statements are basically in conclusion. In actual iQuanta classes, we also read a lot of things about this, don't worry. This is a very short version of it. That's why I make it very short. Yes, so yes. So what is the assumption? The assumption, let me discuss what is the assumption. So what the assumption is basically here, like GDP is one of the most important indicator whether a political party has done a good job or not. Or GDP is one of the major indicator to understand whether we re-elect the political party or not. Am I clear? So my logic is what? The logic what we drawn, like GDP has a direct correlation with political party and deserve a second chance. Am I clear? So GDP is directly correlating with whom? With what? GDP is correlating with a better job and a second term and a re-electing case. Am I clear? So this is the logic. So GDP gives you a good indication whether they have done a good job or not. Good job and re-elected or re-elected. So this is basically the assumption. Yes, this is basically the assumption. Perfect, guys. You are getting it correct. Everyone. Hats off, guys. Hats off. So the next thing that we are going to do now, like, let me show you actually what is the assumption. Let's see. So the assumption is GDP growth is an important factor in deciding the performance of a political party. Yes, that is what we have already said. Every one of you also said, most of you guys, and I have also said, GDP growth is an important factor. Now tell me, this is an important factor. Think about it. It's an important factor I have said. Kya main bola hu? It's an important factor. I'm not saying it is the only important factor. So my general assumption is it is an important factor. So I'm not saying like it is the only factor. Am I clear? I'm not saying it is the only factor. I'm just saying it is an important factor. So this is also basically, this statement is basically the assumption, and this statement is also strengthening also. It also gives you the strength to the argument. So sometimes assumption also strengthening your argument directly. You understand me, right? So this is also strengthening your argument. This is also doing what? This is also doing an assumption. This is also to strengthening your argument, because we are now understanding, like, if it happens, if your political party has a 20% growth, this is a good measure. Your GDP is a good measure understanding the performance of a political party. Yes? One of the important, yes. Now let's go for the second thing. Now I have said GDP growth is the most important factor. Guys, GDP growth is the most important factor. Now what is the difference here? What do I mean by most important factor, folks? What is the importance here? Most important factor. Now I'm thinking about most important. Now tell me what is the difference between this and important and most important. What is the difference? What is the difference? Giving you 1 minute just to figure it out. What's the difference? One important and most important, and what is basically, if I have these two options, which we should decide? Now let's discuss again. The thing what I'm going to do now to make you understand which is more in strengthening section and which is more in assumption section. Now first thing I'm saying, this is also, the second statement is basically more for strengthening. Yes, the second is more for strengthening, because I'm saying it is the only thing, it is the most important factor. Whether it is not a most important factor, still it can be a deciding thing. Do you understand me? It can be, let's say we have GDP, we have happiness index, we have like employment rate, all of these things are important factors, let's say. And GDP is one of them. So still that reason also can validate like re-electing also. Do you understand me? But if I'm saying GDP is the only, and if I'm negating it, what is the negation of GDP is the most important? The negation is the GDP is not most important. Still we can get this conclusion, right? Because I can say GDP is one of the important thing, or GDP ranked second, GDP ranked third. Do you understand me? Do you understand me how I'm negating this thing? A very simple concept, I'm just negating it, right? So if I'm negating most important factor, it doesn't mean this is not an important factor. But if I'm negating an important factor, it means it is not an important factor at all. So whenever you understand, whenever you need to find the right assumption, you need to do what? You need to negate it. You need to negate it. And then see what is the change in your conclusion. If I'm saying GDP is not an important factor. Let's say GDP is not an important factor, right? Then this thing, my conclusion doesn't hold, right? All of you with me. GDP is not an important, then my conclusion won't hold. If GDP is not important, why are we evaluating on the basis of GDP, right? Clear? So this, negating this will change my what? Will change my conclusion. Clear, everyone? So the next thing is what? Next thing is basically GDP growth is the most important thing. Now when I'm saying it is most important factor, if I am negating it also, let's say GDP growth is not the most important factor, then also it can be an important factor. It is not most important, but it is the second important, right? So negation of this won't devalid this thing, won't devalid my conclusion. Whenever negation of your assumption is not devaliding your assumption, it is not a strong assumption. Am I clear? Am I clear, all of you? So this thing basically more works for strengthening. So this thing is morely working for strengthening, not for direct only assumption. Am I clear, guys? All of you? Are you enjoying it, guys? Tell me, like, do you understand all of these things? This is a very technical things I'm teaching today. It's a small session, but it's very, very technical session. Very technical. Cool, guys. Everyone, I hope like you're getting it. Perfect. Now let's think about another assumption. Let's think about this. Let's think about the third one. During the tenure of no previous government, did the GDP grow by more than 10%? Is it a good assumption? Is it a good assumption? It's not a very good assumption. Why it is not a very good assumption? Why? Because let's say in this tenure, the GDP growth might be 20%, but let's say employment is basically 50%. And in the previous government, let's say the GDP growth is 9%, but the employment rate is basically, let's say, 90%. So I'm not saying the GDP is the important factor. I'm just giving you another premise. Am I clear? I'm just adding you another premise. So another premise might strengthen your argument. Another premise might strengthen your argument, might strengthen your conclusion. But it won't be working as your what? Assumption. Do you understand? So these are very close options. Because if you think it like this way, this is... Yes, the statement is clear in other way. The statement means like the no previous party has more than 10% growth. Do you understand me? In GDP. That is the statement. But it doesn't mean like if I'm doing 20% GDP, it's a good indicator. I'm just saying I have done in one section better than you. That doesn't mean like I'm not doing better than in other aspect also. So let's say the employment was 50%. Now the employment before is 90%. So someone might say, my employment here is 90%, so I will prefer this government. Do you understand me? So that's why it is not an assumption, but it is also strengthening. Am I clear, guys? So how we can strengthen, how we can weaken, and how we can make this assumption. All of you, it's up to you now. Let me tell you this thing. Now if you want to weaken it, yes, external factor maybe strengthen it, but it cannot be your assumption. You are absolutely correct, Shreya. It might strengthen everything, but it is not basically happening what? It's not basically like giving you assumption. This is not assumption. Assumption is the logic. Baki, rest of everything can strengthen your case. Rest everything can strengthen your argument. So all this thing can do. But the assumption should have the basic logic connection. The logical connection is 20% GDP growth is, or like GDP growth is basically one of the major factor to decide whether he has done well or he has not done well. Yes, this is the base of assumption. Now, if I want to say like how I want to weaken it, if I want to weaken it, I will say GDP is, there are other things which is more important than GDP. Let's say there are employment rate, happiness index. These are more important than GDP. Then now what I'm doing, I'm basically weakening because I'm attacking on what? I'm attacking on assumption. Am I clear, guys? Is it fine? All good? Cool. So next, just go for a passage. I'll give you time to read it. Then we'll just think about one assumption question. That was our last thing to do today. This is your passage. Just read it, guys. I'm giving you exactly 5 minutes to read. So this is now exactly 5:36. So we will do it in 5:41. I'm giving you 5 minutes to read this entire passage. Then we'll discuss in 10 minutes. Then that is done with the class. Small class, effective, and I think I make you understand what I'm trying to teach you. So that is like, it's a one-way communication. And I'm glad to see like you guys are doing fabulous, fabulous. Like you are understanding it, you are responding. It's excellent, excellent, folks. Now just read this. Brightness low. You, guys, the rest of you guys, the brightness is it really very low? I cannot change right now. Please. Is it not visible? The rest of you guys? Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I'm giving you a side. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. audible? You cannot read it in 20 seconds, Anmol. I'm very sorry to say, you cannot read it in 20 seconds. It's impossible. You cannot. So yes, guys, let's start. Let's start, guys. All of you. Am I audible? Please say yes. Audible, audible. All of you. Cool. So perfect. So now let's think about this passage, right? Yes. A meteor stream is composed of dust particles that have been ejected from a parent comet at a variety of velocities. These particles follow the same orbit as the parent comet, but due to their differing velocity, they slowly gain or fall behind the disintegrating comet until a shroud of dust surrounds the entire cometary orbit. So think about it. Now they're basically in the first sentence, they are saying what is basically cometary orbit, what is like the orbit of a particular parent comet, and how the differing velocities slow and fall they have a disadvantage on all of these things. So whenever we are reading this thing, a meteor stream is composed of dust particles, that's fine, that have been ejected from a parent comet at a variety of velocities. That's fine. That is like think that what is meteor stream. So we are basically defining meteor stream, right? The first thing we are basically defining meteor stream. The next thing is these particles follow the same orbit as the parent comet. So basically what does it mean? Like if we have a lot of small particles, all of these things are basically following the same thing, like the same parent comet, but due to the differing, I don't need to know why. पहले तो छोड़ दो इसको. I don't need to know why, but I just need to know from this. They slowly gain or fall behind the disintegrating comet until a shroud dust of surrounds that entire cometary orbit. So what does it mean? So they, for some specific reasons basically happened, and that's why they are making a kind of shroud. Like you have seen meteor, right? So meteor is basically a light thing, and like all the shrouds are like around a particular object, right? So this is like, yes, that are the premise, obviously. So now the next thing is we are coming like astronomers, now yahan se, astronomers have hypothesized that a meteor stream should broaden with time as the dust particles' individual orbits are perturbed by planetary gravitational fields. Perturbed is basically disturbed. Perturbed is disturbed. So disturbed by the planetary gravitational field. So that is basically giving you another reason. So that is not very important. A recent computer modeling, very important from here. A recent computer modeling experiment tested this hypothesis by tracking something, I don't need to know, over a projected this year period on the positions of a group of hypothetical dust particles. So what a particular company has done, they are just basically making it what? They have making a computerized model just to make sure all of these things. Like they are trying to make everything in a model, which they are basically using in computer. Next is, in the model, the particles were randomly distributed throughout a computer simulation of the orbit of an actual meteor stream. The Geminid, the RES navigator found as expected that the computer model stream broadened with time. Very important, this particular thing. As expected, that means what? They have the same expectation. They expected what they expected in computer model, it is basically actually happening also. So they said the particles were randomly distributed throughout a computer simulation of the orbit of an broadened with time of an actual meteor stream. The Geminid, the RES navigator found as expected the computer model stream broadened with time. So they are basically actually happening the same thing, whatever they have expected, and in the computer model the same thing is happening. So that means what? They are strengthening something, right? They are basically strengthening everything. Now again, second prejudice. Conventional theories, however, predicted that the distribution of particles would be increasingly dense toward the center. जो मुझे नहीं चाहिए अभी. Conventional क्या बोल रहा था? I don't care अभी. जब तक ना we are going to get questions on this. So उसको निकाल दो. इसको मुझे चाहिए ही नहीं अभी. Surprisingly, the computer meteor model stream gradually came to resemble a thick-walled hollow pipe. Very important. तो computer model meteor क्या दिखा रहा है? They are basically showing this resembling a hollow pipe, thick-walled hollow pipe. Very important. So from what is our conclusion from the model? It's basically this meteor is basically a hollow pipe, right? Right, guys? Yes. Whenever the Earth passes through a meteor stream, a meteor shower occurs. Obviously moving at a little over, so I don't need this kind of data. इसको निकाल दो पहले ही. So when Earth passes through a meteor stream, a meteor shower occurs. The Earth would take on average, यहाँ से important है, on an average just over a day to cross the hollow computer model Geminid stream if the stream were 5,000 years old. Now again they are giving a statement. What the computer thing said, like if it is 5,000 years old, so the world Earth will take 1 day almost, yeah, more than 1 day to see it twice. See, the Earth would take on average just over a day to cross the hollow. So the Earth is taking twice time to cross this hollow, like more than a day. 2 brief periods of peak meteor activity during the shower would be observed. That's what I'm saying. 2 activities will be observed on the Earth as Earth entered the thick walled pipe, and 1 as it exited. So they are saying it is a hollow kind of thing. Now remember, understand this. It's a hollow kind of thing. So now Earth is basically inside. Earth is basically going inside and then coming back, going inside. So once it is going inside, we are seeing the meteor shower. One is going outside. We are again seeing the meteor shower, right? So that is what it means. Like if it is a 5,000 years old meteor structure, then we will see twice. And when this is entering inside the hollow thing, like the pipe, and when it is exiting from the pipe. Clear hai? Clear? Now come to the last sign. Has the predicted twin peak activity been observed for an actual yearly Jeremiah meteor shower? Matlab now they are saying whether it's not only a computer based model, whether we have seen it in other case also, whether we have an actual data or not. So that's now, this is the thing what we are basically trying to find. Now they're saying the data between 1970 and 1979, such a bifurcation, a secondary burst of meteor activity being clearly visible at an average of 19 hours. Now they are saying, ये जो दिखा वो 19 घंटे बाद दिखा. तो जब मेरा 5,000 जब मैं सोच लिया था, तो 24 घंटे के बाद दिखना चाहिए था. When it is 19 hours में दिखा ये, मतलब अभी जो मेरा ऑब्जर्वेशनल डेटा है उसमें मुझे दिख रहा है कितना 19 आवर्स. सो आई एम गेटिंग अ कंट्राडिक्शन. डू यू अंडरस्टैंड? सो दिस आर द वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग टू मार्क, because once we have said it takes more than a day, now it is saying it takes less than what? 24 hours. Less than 24 hours. So it is 19 hours now. Now they are saying that means the computer model is not incorrect. What are they saying? They are saying it means the meteor is 3,000 years old. So understand it. They are changing it randomly with the flow. First they are saying, very important thing you need to understand here. क्या हुआ यहाँ पे? पूरा summary क्या है? First they are saying that they are trying to make a computer model which actually replicates this meteor shower basically, and they have seen if it is 5,000 years old, so it will take more than 24 hours to see second times. Like it's a hollow sphere, so when I am going to see second time, more than 24 hours, after more than 24 hours. But actual data is showing on an average 19 hours, after 19 hours we are going to see it again. So what does it mean? And they are not saying it, they are not finishing it here. They are saying, I am saying after 19 hours, so hence it is not true, it is like 5,000 hours before, or 5,000 years. The age is not 5,000 years, the age is basically 3,000 years. So they are changing the conclusion based on what? Based on the computer modeling. So that means what is the thing which is fixed here? The computer modeling. Because they are saying the computer modeling is basically correct. So hence, what we assumed it was 5,000 years old, it is not 5,000 years, it is 3,000 years, because actually it is 19 hours of time gap. Am I clear? अगर 5,000 से ज़्यादा होता उसका उम्र, तो 24 घंटे के बाद दिखता. बट वो दिखा कितना टाइम के बाद? 19 घंटे के बाद. उसके मतलब इसका उम्र ही 5,000 नहीं है. तो मैं क्या यहाँ पे सही मान लिया हूँ? मैं सही मान लिया हूँ कंप्यूटर मॉडलिंग इज एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. तो माय assumption क्या होना चाहिए? कंप्यूटर मॉडलिंग करेक्ट है. नाउ सी द assumption question. देखो, now it's very easy. Now just we need to understand the assumption question. Yes, I'm just, which of the following is an assumption underlying the last sentence of the passage? Exactly last sentence. Exactly the last sentence, guys. The last sentence. Last sentence क्या था? जी, the last sentence is basically this. जो मैं लास्ट में बार बार बोला, जी, as because we have seen in the data the average is 19 hours, we can say it is 3,000 years old irrespective of 5,000 years of old. That was my last conclusion, right? तो ये conclusion के लिए मुझे क्या चाहिए? Assumption. Assumption underlying the last sentence of the passage. They are not saying about the entire assumption. They are saying the last sentence of passage, जिसको वो finally सही मान लिया. What is the assumption behind it? What is the reason behind it? So they are asking for that particular thing. Am I clear? All of you guys, am I clear? Now see, is in each of the years between 1970 and 79, the Earth took exactly 19 hours. ये गलत है. क्यों गलत है? Because मेरा question में देखो क्या था, मैं back कर रहा हूँ question में. क्वेश्चन में यहाँ था, it is average of 19 hours. See, it's average. अगर average 19 hours है, तो we cannot say took exactly 19 hours. That's why A is incorrect. तुम लोग तो सब सही आंसर देने ही लगे हो. Excellent job, guys. Excellent job. Second is the comet associated with the Geminid meteor stream has totally disintegrated. Out of context. Out of context. Why it is out of context? Because they have not said anything about disintegration. Out of context. Yes, guys. Absolutely correct. No, sorry. The Geminid meteor stream should continue to exist for at least 5,000 years. नहीं है. We have already said it is existing for 3,000 years. That is the conclusion. The age is 3,000. So again, it is incorrect. All of you, perfect. D. The Geminid meteor stream has not broadened as rapidly as the conventional theories. We have not talked about what is the speed of broadening. What is the ideal speed that the way the Geminid meteor is basically broadening? We have not talked about it. So it is again incorrect. So obviously E will be your answer. The computer model Geminid meteor stream provides an accurate representation of the development of the actual Geminid stream. That is what I have said. Because they have said like it is the age is 3,000 years because it is not incorrect. So why they are concluding it is 3,000 years? Because they are saying what? They are saying basically if it was 5,000 years, then it should have been what? 24 hours for the next like shower of meteor, right? But it is basically averages 19 hours, so it should have been how much? 3,000 years. That's why E is the answer. Am I clear, guys? Am I clear? Now you understand how we are basically using the entire concept of assumption here. It was not an easy question, trust me. If it is in CAT, I will consider it as a difficult question. Now you understand, all of you can answer this question. Trust me, it's a 95 plus percentile question in CAT. Exactly in CAT. Now you understand like how we can make it very easier just to understand assumption kya hona chahiye and what is the idea behind it. And big claps to all of you guys who have done the answer, who is just right, ekdam clear. So please do it RC in this way, like this engage yourself with RC, understand it, make things visually clear for you, try to understand all the logic behind it. So this way you should do and also focus RC. I hope you loved my session, and if you loved my session, please feel free to compliment me, not here, also in Facebook and other session as well, in other platform as well, because like I have already said, this is the biggest inspiration I have always, like your appreciation, and that's why I have made this kind of PPT, like just to make things much more engaging, entertaining, and everything. It can be this simple, trust me, Dimji, it can be this simple. Things, it's like you can make everything dissected very simply. Trust me in this. Trust me in this. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you're like, it's not shortcut, so the basic things I'll say. And those who have not joined iQuanta, please join iQuanta, because there I'm also going to teach you with our regular sessions, which is a 2-hour sessions. We have dual pedagogy also. You can see me in the sessions with maths, with DI, sometime with RC also, with all these amazing things. So I'll ask all of you to, if you're not, like I can see you in class, because we have this marathon session is just for the flavor of the class and how we actually help students and what is our pedagogy and how we are basically creating an impact in online education. So that is our motive. So this is I have to say. And thank you guys. I hope you guys loved it. So please comment in the Facebook and anywhere like where you like it. I will appreciate a lot. And yes, please join us. Please join me in the live classes as well. We'll see you there. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. It's nice having you on board. And glad tiding. All of you are, I hope, sincere. And you will do great in CAT no matter what happens. Just believe in yourself. Just think about like you can do it. We have everything, like you have everything inside you. So you just need to believe in yourself. You just need to do a regular schedule and try to follow the schedule again and again, just like practice, just like classes and everything. And trust me, in fact, in the initial time, initially the block is much more difficult. When the time grows, you will much more be comfortable with the syllabus, with the strategy, with everything. So please give it time. Do not give up. Please give it time. Just focus on the same thing. You're not making it, do it, see the solution, not understanding solution. Ask us questions in the Facebook page group. We are always available, 24/7 available to answer your questions. And if you're not, then please say there, like we are not getting our answers. If you're not understanding solution, please ask them to give you a better solution and all of these things. So please like communicate with us, and I'm sure you'll be, it will be a great thing. Thank you guys, thank you very much. I have taken a lot of your time, I guess, in the last moment. And thank you. It's pleasure meeting all of you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for such appreciation. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. And yes, we can do sometime an inference-based questions also, because I have told you in the before, like we have not covering inference today. It's basically an assumption, strengthening, weakening. So that's the only thing we have covered. Sometime we may have this kind of classes with inference also, inshallah. Bye-bye, guys. Take care. Have a great evening. Thank you.